All right, well, welcome everyone. Again, my name is Ralph Cochran. I'm the marketing director at Heritage Oak School, and Amy Walker is the head of school at Heritage Oak, and we're just delighted to be able to bring, again, this really thoughtful information about how you can afford a private school right here in Tehachapi. And Amy's got a lot of insights and years of experience where working with many families just like yours to make this a reality. So what I want to do is jump right into this, and we actually have a poll question for you right at the beginning, and I wanted to ask you to answer this. It's going to show up in your chat pane, and throughout the course of this webinar, if you are in the chat pane, you'll notice myself asking questions and getting engaging you, and we want you to ask questions throughout the course of this webinar. At the end of it, Amy's going to be answering questions, and I think you'll find it helpful and more engaging too as you listen to her and also look at what we're talking about in the chat pane too. So I encourage you to do that. So here's the first question for you. It is, do you currently pay tuition for your child's education? So if you can go ahead and select one of those, just take a minute or two to do that, that'd be great. And then we're going to get started here. All right, great. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this right now, and we're going to jump right in here into the presentation. So with that, Amy, you should be able to, there we go. All right, Amy, well, I'm going to hand this over to you. And again, we're delighted you put together this information for us, and we're excited about hearing from you.
Great. Thanks, Ralph, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you made the decision to join us today as we discuss this important topic that I know affects so many as they consider a private school education for their children. Often we hear comments from families that said they would have applied, but they didn't look into the school because they were sure it was expensive and their salary wouldn't cover it, or maybe private schools are only for people with lots of money, which is a shame because they feel it would have benefited so many students, perhaps even their own children. And sometimes we hear feedback such as, why do private schools have to cost so much? In today's webinar, we're going to talk about these concerns by discussing 4 main aspects to affording tuition. The first one is going to be the challenge of affording tuition and how a family can afford tuition. We're also going to talk about how Heritage Oak School can help, and then the next steps you can take as a parent. So let's get started with the first portion here, Ralph. We're going to talk about the challenge that why is a private school education so expensive? Why does it cost so much? And this is a really good question. And it may seem obvious, but sometimes we forget just what all is involved to make an education happen in a school setting. And I hope y'all are seeing the slides come up. I think a little bit of a delay still, but I'm going to keep talking, and hopefully the slides will stay up with us. We all know that
they're coming up just a few seconds after you talk, so I think that's, as long as you just recognize that and everyone else does, we'll be fine.
Great, great. I'm glad you can see them. Well, we all know a quality education costs money, and it's important that private schools not compromise on instructional excellence just because finances may be tight. A first-rate education will always cost something, and unfortunately, it's not free to the school as much as we would like it to be. At Heritage Oak, though, we want to be faithful stewards of the resources God has given us, because we're going to give an account of how the school budget is spent. But we also know He wants us to give our best for Him and the families we serve and not compromise on educational excellence. Every year we review our budget and prayerfully consider where we need to make changes so that we can move one step closer to the goals that He set before us. And for our parents listening, it's important to know that private schools often vary in expenses due to different operating costs and overhead. For example, some schools are housed in churches that donate space, and that saves the school a tremendous amount of money, while other private schools must rent space, which can then significantly impact their budget, and obviously they must pass that on to the parents in educating the students. Another thing when considering a private school is be sure to ask about additional fees so that you understand the financial obligation you're agreeing to and when those fees are due. Typically, one of the most significant budget items for any school will be paying the teaching staff. And it's important that we honor those who are educating our children by paying them a living wage. Luke 10 and 1 Timothy 5:18 tells us that the laborer or worker deserves his wages. And when we consider the role of the educator in our child's life and the dollar value that is often placed on this profession compared to so many other professions, it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that we honor the Lord when we honor those who are serving us in this way. And if we want our teachers to not only be qualified but gifted, we need to hire the best. And often these teachers are in high demand. Thankfully, many serve at reduced salaries when compared to public school teacher salaries, for example, because they consider teaching in a Christian school as their calling and a discipleship ministry. So we're blessed to have many people be a part of our teaching staff that feel very strongly about Christian education. Private schools often lack, well, they lack public funding altogether because there's no government money coming in from taxes and few grants, if any. Typically, schools have two sources of income or revenue. The first one is fundraising or donations, which pay for items often such as the buildings, the curriculum, furniture, computers, operating costs, extracurricular activities, and that kind of thing. And then tuition will traditionally cover teacher salaries and benefits. So while the schools receive almost all their funding from the federal, state, and local government, the public schools, on the other hand, private schools must raise all their own income. And the good news is this allows us the freedom to educate our children without some of the same constraints that are being placed on the public school institutions. It gives us the freedom, for example, to teach from a biblical worldview. So let's talk about limited family financial resources. First, let me encourage you that you're not alone. Most every family is limited in what they can pay for tuition. Few, if any, can write a check each month without giving any thought as to how they're going to budget for that tuition. And with the recent economy, many families feel their budget is already stretched thin, so they don't think there's a way they can afford another expense. And private schools are very mindful of both the need to pay teachers and the need to keep education affordable for parents. And I know at Heritage Oak, we work really hard to make sure we balance these two needs. A lot of prayer goes into any tuition changes whenever we have to do that. So how can we help families afford tuition? First, we're going to cover a few things you might want to consider for planning, but keep in mind one method alone probably won't be enough. Often families will use multiple strategies to reach their goal. And you're not alone. Thousands of parents send their children to private school every year, and they're not millionaires or trust funders. They're just regular families trying to make ends meet and give their children the best education possible. So the question becomes, how do they do it? Well, first of all, they make adjustments for their new priority. They make the commitment to Christian education from a biblical perspective, and that's so much so that they're willing to make some type of sacrifice, willing to give something up because they believe it's worth it. They make changes in how they budget and save, and often I like to encourage parents to unite together as a family to make it happen, with getting the kids on board and make it a family endeavor so everyone's on board to meet the goal. This is a good time to get the family budget in order. Think of your tuition as a fixed expense and just make it a high priority. Like we talked about earlier, knowing the monthly tuition costs and fees will help you as you look for items within your budget to eliminate and make up the difference. And if you're having trouble making a budget work, there's some great resources available already out there from groups such as Dave Ramsey, Crown Financial Ministries, Mary Hunt, and others that can help you find those extra dollars sometimes hidden within your existing budget. I know I've used those ministries myself. And if you start budgeting now, even if your child isn't ready to enter school for a couple of months or years, you'll not only be used to making that monthly payment, you'll also have plenty of, backup money already saved for those lean months when it's a little bit harder sometimes to make tuition. We also have, I encourage families to ask about payment plans to see if it's easier to manage or if the school offers discounts to help reduce the actual amount you pay in tuition. It's not uncommon for schools to help parents in this way. Another resource that families should consider is tuition assistance. Now, don't think this is for everyone else. You don't have to be on food stamps to qualify. And you could always go off financial assistance if your situation changes. And I encourage parents to make that their goal. But go ahead and apply and leave tuition assistance in the Lord's hands and let Him guide and direct that. Let's talk about some creative options for parents for funding their tuition payments. When visiting with families, I'm always amazed that they found creative ways to make that monthly payment. We have a family, Wendy Deering and her husband, who put 3 girls through Heritage Oak School over a 14-year period. And she told me they got really creative by turning off their cable TV and garbage service, and that they actually drove their garbage to the dump for years. And they were also able to couple that with some additional help from grandparents. And with all of those strategies combined and some others, they were able to trim their tuition costs considerably. Another family, Craig and Anita Bauer, have had 4 children at Heritage Oak, with 2 still attending and 2 are in college now. And they often still get up early on Saturday mornings to hit all the yard and garage sales as well as some estate sales to pick up those overlooked, hot collectible items. And then they turn around and they sell them on eBay. And they've had some really great finds over the years, but mostly it's been made up of several smaller, items that they found that just add up over time in order to help reduce those tuition costs. And then we have Lynn Henning, who has a daughter at Heritage Oak since she entered kindergarten last year. And in order to trim tuition costs, Lynn started selling 31 bags until their budget caught up with their new tuition payment. So she also teaches an exercise class several mornings a week at Bear Valley Whiting Center and uses these things to help her family pay for their tuition. So what can your family do? Well, you'll need to sit down as a family and brainstorm ideas that will work for you, but there are a few ideas that I want to share with you that might help you get started and get your brain thinking about some things. For example, you could sell an asset such as a second property or boat or something if you have a large item, or you could start a small home business like Lynn did with her 31 bags, and there's all kinds of ideas out there now for doing this from home. Another personal favorite of mine is to take advantage of the summer months to earn money, because the entire family can help out. You can earn enough to pay for tuition, with a huge chunk of that being taken care of, and not worry about it so much during the school year when everybody's trying to keep up with all the activities. So something that the family could do during the summer to raise that money. And then don't forget grandparents. Many grandparents want to help, but they don't want to be pushy. And so talk about your needs with them and ask them to prayerfully consider if they want to partner with you to make this happen. We have a family at the Wilson family who told me recently that they had family helping them, and it was a huge support. The Grandpa asked if he could buy the kids a large and expensive playground set, so they asked if he would consider helping with, if he would help them with the kids' school costs instead, and he was thrilled to do it. And ever since then, he's been a really generous supporter of their educational goals financially. So he's really gotten excited about that once he got started. So if you have like-minded grandparents, what better use of future inheritance dollars than an excellent Christian education where they can actually see the fruits of their blessing to the grandchildren while they're still alive and can just get joy out of that. So keep in mind, any fundraising donations are tax deductible for the grandparents as well, and they'll appreciate that. So how can Heritage Oak help you with your tuition and partner with parents? Let's cover, first of all, the actual tuition and fees and what this covers, because it's actually quite a bit. First of all, the tuition covers the teacher's salary, so we can bring those committed Christian professionals into the classroom. And then the book fee includes all the educational curriculum needs that your student will have. The student fees that we have are for those expenses that come into play, such as field trips, lab supplies, art projects in the classroom. And through our student fees, we provide all of our K through 6 students with their paper, pencils, crayons, and items that you typically have to hunt down before school starts. So all that's covered and makes it a lot easier for parents. They just have to provide a backpack and lunchbox and show up at school the first day. About the only thing the student fees don't cover would be our Wednesday hot lunches and yearbooks, graduation expenses, so which are very modest. So it pretty much covers everything. And finally, our fundraising covers all other general expenses that the school has, like electricity or postage, our classroom furniture, and that kind of thing. It also helps us with our financial aid for families needing tuition assistance, but it also reduces our tuition costs for all the families in the school. And let me show you how that works. We've broken down the educational costs at Heritage Oak in such a way as to be budget friendly for families. Our $4,500 tuition rate for the first child in grades K through 12 is, like I mentioned earlier, is going to cover the teacher's salary, and it's one of the lowest in Kern County. And so we've been as frugal with that as we can, keeping the families in mind. However, it doesn't cover all the costs like we mentioned, and so to cover the remaining costs, we have our $1,500 fundraising program for each family, which allows parents to be creative with how they come up with that other 1/3 of the tuition that it costs to educate the student. If parents want to write a check and pay it just like tuition, they can do so, and they'll receive a tax-deductible receipt. And we have several families that do that, and we also have some whose grandparents choose to pay that. And so, again, the grandparents get the tax savings. For most of our families, though, they prefer to participate in one or both of our fundraising events in order to earn their $1,500. And we now have many families participating in our script program, which is a great way to raise funds without ever selling a thing. And it's been wildly popular with our families. Just in this 1 year alone, they've netted over $20,000 toward fundraising. So you can see they've already gotten on board with that, and they're loving it. And it works out really well. So another thing Heritage Oak does is we offer payment plans, either 10-month or 12-month for those who want a lower payment. And we also offer deep discounts for second students and on. For example, the second student tuition is roughly $2,500, which is nearly half off. And listeners can see additional discounts on our website at heritageoakschool.com under admissions, and then click on tuition, and you'll see the rate scale for multiple students there. And then finally, we offer a confidential financial analysis for those who are interested in tuition assistance. Once you apply for admission to the school, then you can go visit our website, click on the link for a third-party analyst to review your financial portfolio and make a recommendation to the school. They'll make a recommendation to the school for assistance up to 50% off. So I want to encourage listeners not to dismiss the financial aid based solely on their income. We also use an in-house questionnaire that goes with that to assess for things that financial records don't always reveal. For example, if you have a grandparent living in the home temporarily, or maybe you've had some medical bills and issues that have come up, or some other circumstance that's unusual, it's always best to go ahead, fill out the forms, and see what you might qualify for. So knowing this information, what would be the next steps that a family should take? The most important thing that a family can do is pray. And if you've signed up for this webinar, something has brought you to the place where you would consider a private education for your child. Let me encourage you not to quickly dismiss that concern. To the Lord in prayer and ask Him why that conviction is placed on your heart, and seek Him fervently to address that concern you're having, and ask Him to just clearly confirm His direction for your family and your child. And then the next thing would be that step of faith and trust the Lord. Sometimes God tests us to see if we're willing to trust Him, and we can get so wrapped up in our budget and trying to make it work that we can kind of get that paralysis by analysis. And if the Holy Spirit is nudging you toward a biblical education for your child, it's important to ask yourself, can you really afford not to take this step of faith, even if it seems unsure and you don't know all the answers. He knows what we don't know, and including what's ahead in the future with your budget and with your child. And if you go ahead and give it a try for a year, and during that time your child's going to get a great education, and you're going to meet some wonderful friends, your children will meet some wonderful friends, and you'll give the Lord an opportunity to demonstrate what He can do. So many of our families have done this, and we're able to see Him work things out in such a way that they were able to stay at Heritage Oak year after year. This would be an excellent time for you to take that next step and get a look at the inside of Heritage Oak School. We have tours available Tuesday through Thursday or by appointment, as well as several open house events where you can find out about classical education. You can see some class demonstrations, look at curriculum, and ask every question you can think of. And I'd love to meet each of you in person and check us out. So Ralph, perhaps our listeners have some questions today that I could answer before we close.
Yes, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, Amy, that was fantastic. I really appreciate that. And yeah, we had a lot of several people come in later during the presentation, and just so they know, this will be recorded and shared, so you can go back and review that. One question is, what percentage of families at Heritage receive financial aid?
Most families have been able to come up with creative ways for making their tuition. So we actually have kind of a low number on tuition assistance, but we have approved almost every single person who has applied. So that's been the really great part, that if they go ahead and go through that process, they may not receive the entire 50%, but they do receive some percentage that helps them.
Yeah, and I guess a question might come up too is just, you know, over the years you probably had people come to you and they're maybe embarrassed by the fact that they might need financial aid, and yet, I guess, how would you talk to someone like that with that kind of mindset where they're, you know, maybe in the past they didn't need help from anyone, but now they really do, but they're really just hesitant about asking. Could you kind of address that?
Sure, right. First of all, it's confidential. The other families in the school don't know that those which families are on financial aid unless that family were to tell them. And so the staff doesn't even really know, only myself and the school board who approve of the financial aid, and our school administrative assistant who helps me with that information. And so it's kept private. A lot of times I encourage families that, if they would go ahead and take that step and give it a try, doesn't mean that they have to stay on financial aid. I know every family goes through hard times financially for different reasons. And so it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And many times it's beyond the control of the family at that time. I know that my family personally has gone through a period of time where we had extensive medical bills and just were almost overwhelmed by them. And it was only for a season of life. It was not something that lasted forever. And once we were able to get past those medical bills, then of course things got easier. Sometimes a mom or dad working gets a pink slip and they're temporarily, their job is put on hold for a while. So when those things happen, we want to come together as a family and support each other. That's what the body of Christ is supposed to do. But we don't know who needs it if they don't apply and ask. And so I want to encourage families not to be embarrassed about that. Doesn't mean that you're not handling your finances well. We all have been there. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Great. I'm trying to get access to I'm going to see if someone has a question here, but I'm not able to read it for some reason. My computer's not letting me do that. So Lynn, I apologize here. I'm not able to see your question if you're asking one. It's telling me you're asking a question, so I apologize for that. Yeah, let me just see here, Amy, 1 second, so I can get that. Yeah, I guess yeah, I think one of the questions here is how has it been for families when they come on financial aid? How long do you typically see them continuing on and throughout the process and needing that for years to come? Like, is it only? I just know some schools, families are hesitant to do the financial aid because they know they need it for several years, so they don't want to make the switch and then find out a year from now that they're not going to get the financial aid. So why make the switch if they're only going to get the aid for 1 year? How does that work for you guys?
Right. We usually, if a family's been approved the first year, they are approved from then on unless there's a significant financial change. For example, the dad got some tremendous pay raise or something. And a lot of families stay on financial aid at least 2 or 3 years. And that's about the average, about 3 years. And that gives them, nothing in life stays the same, and that can be both good and bad, but in terms of, finances, it's good to know that if you're at a point right now where things are struggling, it probably won't stay the same. It's going to change at some point. Usually after about a 3-year period, something changes in the scenario that creates a different situation for the family. And we just work with families on that. We have had, though, some single moms put their students through school for many years, and the school has always walked alongside those single moms and helped them financially. We just feel that that is like serving widows and orphans, even if they're not truly a widow. And those moms have just been a great addition to our school life, and they often are available to help out and just chip in other ways that are invaluable. And so, again, it's going to vary from situation to situation, but the average is 2 to 3 years.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was able to figure out what Lynn's question was here. I'm sorry, Lynn. Here's a question. Can a parent's work hours count towards their family's tuition or towards the fundraising?
What we do with our financial aid is when a family is awarded financial aid dollars, we ask the family if they would contribute to the school with extra hours, if it's all possible. And so we work with them on that, and they will usually help out with some extra lunch duty or something like that. The fundraising is actually something that is we actually need to raise those dollars, and so we provide um, a couple of fundraising events each year that the parent can jump on board and be a part of. And so they're already in existence. The parent doesn't have to dream up something to fundraise, and they don't have to send their children door to door. We really want to keep our children from having to do that. So as adults, we come alongside and say, okay, we're going to have a fall and a spring fundraising event that the adults get involved in, and we give of our time toward that, but it's for the purpose of generating dollars.
Great. And here's a related.
Lynn, I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, and she actually has a related question. Can a family bring a new fundraising idea to the table, or can they only raise funds through established fundraising events?
We welcome ideas. In fact, our new spring festival that's coming up was an idea on the part of a parent, and she presented the idea and was willing to kind of take the lead on that, and we just supported her because it was a great idea. We also have on our website, if you go, I believe on ways to support Heritage Oak, the tab that says that, you will see we have a car show every year. Two dads in our school just loved cars and wanted to do their own fundraiser, and they have pulled together an annual T-Town Rumble, and they get all these antique car enthusiasts to bring their cars for a fee, and they have all kinds of booths and fun activities that day, and they generate all of their fundraising in one event just like that, and then some, because it's become a very popular event. So that's another example of a family that just came up with their own idea.
Great, excellent. Yeah, that looks like all the questions for now, unless someone has something here last minute. But those are some
well,
really.
I want to encourage families again, come meet us, come see for yourself what we're about. It's easy to hear, different things about different churches or different schools, but until you actually go see for yourself, you won't really be able to get the full picture. So I just want to encourage everyone that we welcome them to come see. I would love to sit down with them and visit, and if they have questions later that come up, I could answer them at that meeting.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you again, and thanks for all those who attended. Again, this will be put out on a recording. You'll be able to watch it. We'll send an email out to you here in the next couple of days. So thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate you listening in here. And we'll be doing more of these webinars in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.